There are many species of shark that reside in the deep ocean. Most are on the smaller side, but some are giants. Massive predators that rival even the great white in terms of length, gliding through the deep ocean. For these particular giants that reside in the deep, how deep are we talking? Well, as of right now, the record for the deepest anyone has ever scuba dived was set back in 2014, when Ahmed Gabr dove 332 meters, or 1,090 feet. That's pretty deep, but we want to go a lot deeper. Add 900 feet to that and we get to the max known depth of a Japanese spider crab, the largest known arthropods on the planet. If we descend a few thousand feet more, we would be right up against the edge of the twilight zone, around the max depth of something like a giant oarfish. But we still need to go deeper, into the midnight zone, at a depth of roughly 3,300 feet. No sunlight is able to reach this depth of the ocean, and we are in pitch black, and we need to go deeper. At about 4,000 to 5,000 feet, you might find something like the humpback anglerfish, and if we dive another 2,500 feet in the right part of the ocean and turn on some lights, we might just see a giant shark. The Somniosidae family are a family of sharks that are commonly referred to as sleeper sharks, due to the fact that they are pretty slow-moving, chill sharks. Not all sleeper sharks are huge, but we are going to be looking at some of the bigger ones, 3 in particular actually, and we are going to be looking at just how big they can get, starting with Somniosus antarcticus, or the southern sleeper shark. As the name suggests, this shark can be found in the southern oceans around areas like the Strait of Magellan, South Africa, southern Australia, New Zealand, and a few other places. Now, to be honest, it's hard to get much info on this shark. It seems like some of the information we do have comes from the few caught as bycatch. Only a few are caught each year, so we have to take the info on these sharks with a grain of salt. But these southern sleeper sharks are reported to get up to about 4.4 meters, which is about 14 feet. But on IUCN, it states they have a max length of about 6 meters, so almost 20 feet. And they do reference a paper for their measurement, so perhaps they do get close to that length, or perhaps even longer for all we know. So the question comes up, are they as big as, or bigger than a great white? Well, if they are truly around these lengths, then maybe they are as long as white sharks, but it's important to remember that size is determined by overall mass, and whites get pretty thick and heavy. I think we often like to focus on length, but with big white sharks, you can tell they aren't just long, they're also pretty wide. Apart from size, another thing that is kind of incredible and noteworthy about these and some other sleeper sharks is that they will feed on large cephalopods, like giant and colossal squid. As I said in the last video, in deep-sea research called Antarctic Jaws, Cephalopod Prey of Sharks in Kerguelen Waters, it states, quote, "Sleeper shark is a fish with sperm whale-like feeding habits, and hence the second top predator known to science to rely significantly on giant squids." It's not just squid though. The southern sleepers also feed on prey that seems to contradict the name sleeper. There was a research paper that looked at bite marks on elephant seals on Macquarie Island, which is in the Pacific about halfway between New Zealand and Antarctica. The researchers found a pretty big bite on a pretty big elephant seal. The seal was almost 4 meters or about 13 feet long, and they weigh thousands of pounds. And it seems clear it was a southern sleeper shark that made the attempt. As the paper states, the characteristics of the bite wound illustrated in Figure 1A are consistent with those made by a sleeper shark, Somniosus antarcticus. Sleeper sharks have a broadly U-shaped mouth, the lower jaw of which contained a row of small, closely overlapping teeth. They estimate the shark was about 3 to 4 meters, so about 10 to 13 feet, and most likely significantly lighter than the elephant seal. So why was this slow-moving sleeper shark going after a big, living elephant seal? And it was alive because it escaped and survived. They are a predatory shark, but it is thought they mostly would scavenge, and this bite was a rare observation, but many of the sharks did have marine mammal remains in them. A paper from 2003 found that about 33%, quote, contained marine mammal remains, which may suggest, as the paper put it, the sleeper shark actively prey on these marine mammals, though it could be from scavenging. It is a bit of an enigma with sleeper sharks how they seem to end up hunting what we'd imagine to be difficult to catch prey. It can be said for the southern sleeper shark, but also for the next shark we're going to look at, the Pacific sleeper shark. If you ever watched Megalodon caught on camera videos, or videos debunking Megalodon caught on camera, you might have seen this video filmed off the coast of Japan of a large shark, with some claiming the footage is from the Mariana Trench and that the shark in the footage is 60 feet long, based on a size estimate of the cage being 3 meters long or something. The cage, however, isn't that big, and this video, which is from Suruga Bay and not the Mariana Trench, is actually showing a Pacific sleeper shark. The connection is interesting, as sometimes advocates of living Megalodon will say and comment things along the lines of, maybe Megalodon is still alive, it just lives in the deep ocean, maybe it's not quite as big, and maybe it has a bit of a slower metabolism. Well, we don't have any evidence of that, but I mean, I can offer you sleeper sharks. As one comment put it, they are basically cryptids, which, okay, they're not actually, because we know about them, of course, but they have some of the hallmarks of a good cryptid, being mysterious, residing in the deep ocean, and of course, being rather large. I mean, how many people even know about the southern sleeper shark? Hello?
Yeah?
Have you ever heard of a southern sleeper shark?
No?
I digress. Back to the Pacific shark. They live in, well, the Pacific, from Alaska to Japan to Mexico. And while the one in the video is not 50 to 60 feet long, it's still pretty big. How big? Well, all we have is part of the shark and the cage to make an estimate. Now the cage is probably closer to 3 feet in length rather than 3 meters. So the estimate that came out from that was about 7 meters for the shark, or about 23 feet. Now it is an estimate. The largest one measured was about 14 feet. But we haven't really caught or studied too many of these animals, and most sources like NOAA and a few scientific papers suggest that this 7 meter 23 feet estimate is pretty reasonable. It's not even the largest estimate. Suppose deep sea photos taken at over 6,000 feet deep off the coast of Hawaii took an image of a Pacific sleeper that was estimated to be somewhere between 5 to 8 meters, which is 15 to 26 feet. Exciting, but I think our eyes are drawn to the upper estimate, at least mine were. There is a range and an estimate, but either way it seems reasonable that these sharks can reach and maybe even exceed 20 feet in length, based on some rough scales. There are bigger claims, of course. It seems that whenever an animal gets to about 20 feet or a little more in length, 30-foot claims start to pop up. Claims from a few decades ago, but no specimen measured and no photo or video to even make an estimate with. Now, I want to be delicate with this. I always say that we should be careful about size claims. Say what you will about Robert Wadlow and the average height versus outliers and arguments I've already addressed before, but as we've seen time and time again throughout human history, humans very often overestimate and exaggerate size, and we're not very good at eyeballing the size of an animal. And there's something about animals that are confirmed to reach 20 feet that always seem to have 30 feet unverified size claims. However, I will concede this. There are a lot of videos, photos, and research papers on animals like green anacondas and saltwater crocodiles, and there are many of them in captivity. We don't really have the same for the Pacific sleeper shark. Their range, and particularly their extreme depth, mostly keeps them away from people. And since they don't seem to be directly targeted for fishing, there is still a shroud of mystery over them. In the 90s, there seemed to be a little boom in their population, as seen in how many were caught as bycatch, and no supergiants were caught. But there's still a lot we don't know about these sharks. And I will admit, I do hope there is a 30-foot giant somewhere in the ocean. And by the way, if there is, that would change things up. A 23-foot Pacific sleeper might not beat a white shark in overall mass. A 30-foot Pacific sleeper, though, very well might. There is a post on NOAA Fisheries that talks about a study from 2024. And the article describes the Pacific sleeper as the largest shark in Alaska and possibly the largest predatory fish in the ocean. Again, possibly. We don't have confirmation right now, but maybe. There are a few little other facts and tidbits that are interesting about the Pacific sleeper shark, but I think it's time we got to probably the most famous of the sleeper sharks, Somniosus microcephalus, aka the Gurry shark, the gray shark, or you might know it as the Greenland shark. Now right off the bat, this shark is probably most famous for its incredible lifespan. This was big news back in 2016 when a paper was published titled "iLens Radiocarbon Reveals Centuries of Longevity in Greenland Shark." And the paper examined, quote, radiocarbon dating of an iLens nuclei from 28 female Greenland sharks. And the biggest one, that was a little over 500 centimeters or about 16.5 feet in length, was also the oldest, and she was about, quote, 392 years old. Plus or minus 120 years, and a lot of media outlets went with the upper limit of about 500 years. 28 sharks isn't even that large of a sample size really, so maybe they really do get to and exceed 500 years or more. The Greenland shark is the longest lived vertebrate. Curiously, the Greenland shark is often considered to be the largest sleeper shark, which, hold on a second, so how massive do they get? Well, it seems the largest on record, as referenced in the Conservation of the Greenland Shark, setting scientific law and policy coordinates for avoiding a species at risk, and sizing of ocean giants. The largest on record was a 6.4 meter in length, so about 21 feet, and weighed a little over 1,000 kilos, so 2,200 pounds. Now at this point you might be saying, hold on, what about the 23-foot Pacific sleeper shark? It wasn't weighed, but I'm no shark expert or authority in any way, but considering they are closely related and have a similar shape, shouldn't the weight of a similar or longer Pacific sleeper shark be pretty close to the Greenland shark? Yeah, I think so. But my guess is that since one is a measurement and the other is an estimate based on a video, we have to go with what's verified. Again, the Pacific sleeper might not actually be 23 feet long, but again, as just some silly person on YouTube, I'd guess these sharks, and even the southern sleeper shark, are probably pretty close in size. That's just my guess. I should address that some people have said under the tiger shark video that I forgot about the Greenland shark, and that it is bigger than the tiger. So at first I thought, alright, it seems the tiger isn't as long, but it's heavier, right? The tiger shark is heavier and therefore bigger? Well, not so fast. A cursory search will tell you the max record for a tiger shark was 2,900 pounds, or 1,300 kilos, which would make it heavier. But I'm not so sure about this number. I've already made a video about how large tiger sharks can get, and going back to my notes, I don't have one that big. Now, maybe I just missed it, but looking into it again, I can't really find a clear source on that number. The International Game and Fish Association has the record for the largest tiger caught at 810 kilos, or 1,785 pounds. A research paper about the maximum size of tiger sharks in Hawaii briefly mentions an extraordinary claim of a 740 centimeter 3,110 kilo female caught off Indochina in 1957, though it does also state, quote, is unclear as it is based on an unverified, annotated photograph rather than empirical measurement. So it may be that sleepers outsize tigers. So do they get the number 2 spot as the second largest predatory shark? Maybe, but there are a lot of contenders for number 2. Whites so far clearly are the largest predatory shark due to being a lot heavier, but there are a bunch of sharks that approach about 20 feet in length or so that seem to have similar weights. Even other deep sea sharks like the blunt-nosed six-gill shark or the goblin shark, which turned out to reach a much greater size than we initially thought. Make sure to check out Shark Toes' latest video to find out more about that. Anyway, getting back to the Greenland shark. While they certainly do live at extreme depths, they do go to shallower waters at times, sometimes to feed. In fact, it seems most sleeper sharks migrate up closer to the surface at night. Speaking of feeding, there have been some interesting creatures found in the stomachs of these sharks. Now generally they seem to eat things like squid and some other fish, and sometimes larger prey. A study done in 2008 to 2009 in Svalbard caught 76 sharks, and about 42% contained seal tissue. The paper also stated that the condition of the seals and fishes found in the sharks' stomachs indicate that they are not only scavengers but also active predators of both fish and mammalian prey. Bit of an issue with that though. This study also put accelerometers in some of the sharks, which, quote, showed that they swim extremely slowly with average speeds of 0.34 meters a second and burst speeds of only twice this value, end quote. Now, 0.34 meters a second is like 0.76 miles per hour. Believe it or not, seals can move a little faster than 0.76 miles an hour. So how can these sharks catch them? Well, the same paper speculates that, quote, given the swim speed of these sharks, we suggest that the only way they could successfully capture a healthy seal is via cryptically approaching the seals that are asleep in the water. Seals aren't the only mammals found in Greenland sharks. Sometimes a bit of a moose, a full reindeer found in another, and multiple times polar bear remains. Do they hunt polar bears? Well, never say never, but I don't think they sleep in the water. And setting aside a very sick or dying or injured bear, it would seem that the polar bear meals are scavenging events. There is also a report of a Greenland shark with a human leg inside, or at least, kind of. There is a report from 1859 from a pond inlet in Canada. However, it seems like this was a story that was never verified, and again, even if it was true, it could have been scavenging of someone who drowned. There are actually no verified accounts of attacks from sleeper sharks. Humans aren't on the menu, and encounters are pretty rare anyway due to the extreme habitat. Not only the depth, but for some, like the Greenland shark, the cold waters. Or usually cold waters. A paper from 2022 spoke about a sleeper shark in the Western Carribean. While they weren't completely sure what kind of sleeper shark it was, the paper states the exact species could not be confirmed. It is most likely a Greenland shark or a hybrid between the Greenland shark and the Pacific sleeper shark. Before reading this, I didn't even know they could hybridize. And it also makes me a little more confident that they are probably pretty close in size as a species, or as two species. We know more about the Greenland shark than some other sleeper sharks, and while knowledge is generally a good thing, one of the reasons we have more information on Greenland sharks is because there is a fishing industry around them. Or there was. Greenland shark fishery was fairly big in Greenland until 1966. with shark livers and skins being exported for various products. From 1850 to 1938, records estimate annual landings of up to 44,000 sharks, although some other sources I've read said about 30,000 sharks. Also, although the shark flesh is toxic for consumption, if it's treated properly, it can be eaten, and the shark is considered a delicacy in Iceland. NAFO did bring a ban on the retention of Greenland sharks in 2018, but it's a bit complicated since their range isn't fully known, and it can be difficult when they're caught as bycatch. This can be pretty rough, as these sharks are kind of vulnerable. They may get very old, but they don't reach sexual maturity until they're about 150 years old. And according to VU Research Portal, the gestation period is, quote, very likely between 8 and 18 years. So it could be 178 years before they can even have pups. Not just that, but there is also something just a bit deflating to think that a shark could be in the ocean for hundreds and hundreds of years before just being caught as bycatch. Thanks to my patrons, and thank you for watching.